Welcome to the Teach Big podcast, where big energy, big ideas, and big results are just the beginning. I'm your host, Randi Whitney, and whether you're in year 1 or year 20, we are here to fuel your passion and help you teach big in every single way. That's right, B-I-G. Here, education is inspired, energy is required, and support for teachers is absolutely non-negotiable. I would greatly appreciate you guys liking, sharing, and subscribing so that you can become a part of our Teach Big community. This episode tackles those moments that go beyond the script. Welcome back, Teach Big family. I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're driving to work, prepping your classroom, or catching a quiet moment after a long day, thank you for spending time with me. Today, I want to take you beyond the script. Literally. I'm diving deep into my book called Beyond the Script and talking about why I wrote it, how it's meant to serve you, and how it can completely reshape the way you think about your craft as a teacher. So before we get started in that part, let's do a tiny review. Remember, the mission statement of Teach Big is to help teachers everywhere become experts in their content, craft, and complements. Remember, we do those things so that we can soar in confidence and in cognition. Very important. So build up our heart and brain in both ways, confidence and cognition. Now, last episode, I believe it was episode 2. In episode 2, we tackled the content part, but in a big way and an overview kind of way. I will be tackling deeper pieces of that as we progress through our podcast series. So the Full Circle of Language Arts book, this one right here, this one is the content piece of the puzzle. But today we will be talking about the craft part. The craft. Now, let's talk about the relationship between content and craft. Content is what knowledge needs to be in our brain in order to share it with others. The craft is the act of sharing it with others. So they go hand in hand. If we're not good at one, we're probably not so great at the other, in that we need them to work together in tandem with one another. Now, let me start by telling you where in the world the idea came from for this particular book. My sweet daughter-in-law is a second grade teacher, and her very first day of teaching, she had anticipated for so long. All summer long, she had bought everything for her classroom, cute decorations, name tags for kids, everything you can think of for her sweet little kids. She had planned for it. She came just like I came from, a teacher and preacher kind of family. So did she. A long line of educators. She was ready. What she was not prepared for was the script. Now, let's define what we mean by script. Script for some people does mean a verbatim curriculum script, and a lot of us are in that case scenario. That's okay. We're going to find the great things about that, and that's what this book is about, thriving within that environment as well. But a second type of script might be the schedule of your day, the back-to-back, so hectic, sometimes chaotic schedule of the day. 9:03, you got to get them to music. 10:14, you've got to get them to PE. 11:22, you got to get them to lunch, and so on and so on. You feel the vibe there. But sometimes the script is your own to-do list. Sometimes we put that on ourselves as I want to get this accomplished, this accomplished, this accomplished. And when those things go awry, it's like, oh my word, are you serious right now? So in her particular case scenario, it was a little bit of all three of those. As a brand new teacher, you know the schedule can get quite a bit overwhelming, and you think, oh my goodness, I'm already late for music. And so that puts a little bit of stress on the day and takes you beyond the script that you had anticipated. She also is a very orderly person. She likes to predict things and plan for things. So she also had a pretty tight rein on what she wanted to accomplish in those first few days and weeks and months with her second graders. But what she also learned within her particular district is that there was a script to follow, an actual script, and that meant she had scripts to read to her students for every content area just about, but especially for the language arts components. She was very frustrated within this script because she felt like she needed to get it done exactly as the district had it planned and exactly in the amount of time in which they planned for it. Well, I kept telling her they probably don't mean for you to do it down to the minute. And she says, yes, they do. Like, okay. So what she did, sweet, sweet girl, she and my sweet son, the night before every single lesson, she would teach it to him in their living room to make sure she could fit it in the right amount of time. She was that particular in making sure everything was absolutely perfect. So in that way, I feel kind of like I birthed the girl instead of her being my daughter-in-law, because I feel the need to be perfect. So I had to have the perfect speech with her. Remember, Kaylee, perfect does not mean you do everything perfect. It means that you have the pursuit of the passion to be perfect. As long as you have the want to, then you are perfect. That's what makes you perfect. That helped a little, but what helped even more is when I asked her to describe to me what she was reading from this script. And it truly was very scripted, and it was verbatim. It was word for word, and she didn't want to miss a word or mess up any words. But here was one of the struggles within that system. She said that she had students who were not ready and prepared to sit and listen to a 15-minute phonics lesson. And those little kids, keep in mind, they're second grade. And so you have little Johnny in the back. He might be, lifting up his chair in the air, pretending it's a parachute. And then you might have another little girl up in the front, rolling all around. She did not know how to correct those behaviors and not go off the script and stay within the time frame. So disciplinarily speaking, she was pretty good. But the problem was if she took the time to correct those behaviors, that threw her off the script. And then I told her, what if I told you there was a way to solve some of those behaviors? Now, of course, we can't solve all of them. We do understand that there are special circumstances within the bodies of little kids that we cannot always control. But we're going to take under control what we are able to take into our control. And what I mean by that is, what can we do to function well and excel within the scripted curriculum that we've been given, the scripted day of our schedule, and our own script of our to-do list? It wasn't that we had to accomplish everything on all of those scripts to make it a successful day, because especially with second graders, that is not going to happen. That is where my book, Beyond the Script, comes into play. So let's talk about this for a minute. If we're talking about beyond the script, there's two aspects of it that we need to think about when we're trying to traverse our way through a scheduled hectic day or a to-do list or a verbatim script from our district or state. So what can we do to still maintain ourselves within that script? It's somebody else's writing. It's somebody else's curriculum. But we need to be the great deliverers of that information. And that is our craft, to be the great deliverers of it. But wait, there's another part. The other part is, as we're being these great deliverers, our craft, there's one inherent problem, and that's little Johnny in the back pretending his chair is a parachute. That is us going beyond the script. So how do we maintain ourselves throughout the scripted curriculum? And also, how do we handle the things that are going beyond the script? If we can tackle both of those aspects, then we can really help the design of that curriculum and its intent to work at its fullest. So I truly believe if your district has given you a curriculum to use, that they have done their due diligence, they've done their research, and it's a wonderful curriculum on some level. You may not see it yet, but I hope that after this podcast, and hopefully if you ever get to have one of our seminars or read this book, that it will help you see even more that the curriculum that's been chosen for your school or for your district really has great merit. And so part of finding that merit is finding ourselves. And part of finding that merit is knowing what to do when everything goes beyond the script. So let's talk about the different ways that we need to make sure that we are being ourselves. Let's talk about that. I call this the 4 P's: purpose, personality, people, and prediction. I'll say that again: purpose, personality, people, and prediction. First, we cannot lose our purpose. Why did you become a teacher? To make a difference, to do something in the lives of kids, to share your passions and your knowledge. All great reasons, but we have to make sure we haven't lost that. And then there's your personality. Within any scripted curriculum, within any hectic schedule of the day, you should still be you, and your students should know you well. Help your students know you by doing things like telling them your favorite color, or if you have a collection of something, make sure they know you collect that special something. When I was teaching 4th grade, I was a 3rd grade teacher down the hall, and she collected these little miniature troll dolls. And oh my word, it became so cute. I'm not even sure if she ever intended to collect them, but once some students saw that she had a couple and she loved them, everybody bought her the little troll dolls. She had every color, she had every style. It became a way for the students to bond with her personality, and everyone in the school knew that this was Tammy's thing. And I love that because she showed her big personality to her students. She shared her personality with her students, and therefore they were very endeared to her. And then there is your people. Your people are your students. That is who we are here to serve. Now, keep in mind, we have to have a full understanding of our people. There are so many varied aspects of our students. Sometimes it's their own personalities. Sometimes it's the home in which they came from, their backgrounds, their history. Sometimes it's the special challenges that each of the students have. We also sometimes call this differentiation. So that was a big challenge for my sweet daughter-in-law. And she said, how do I help this kid that needs this, and this kid that needs this, and then this kid who really doesn't need anything at all because she's going to get it anyway? I said, well, that is called differentiation. And I have several chapters in the book about that. And those are a podcast of their own. But what I do is I take the 10 most common learning challenges, everything from ADHD to oppositional defiant disorder, etc. And I talk about how do we include those students within our scripted curriculum when it's not written in the script. So we'll have things like for the ADHD kid who needs to be always moving and doing something. Imagine a yarn across your whiteboard, and you tape it on the left and you tape it on the right. And then there's a little arrow that you move. And what if you let that little guy go to the front and he moves that arrow whenever he hears something that he feels is important in the script? So he kind of gets to be your team teacher for the day. Move that arrow along the timeline of that lesson. And keep in mind, it doesn't really matter if he moves it at what you think is an important moment. but it's that he feels completely involved and he's no longer holding that chair in the back of the room over his head as a parachute, but instead he's team teaching with you. Help him feel important and to thrive in that setting. And so not only will that be helping him, but that helps the other students, your visual learners, follow along when the important things happen. So I have a ton of ideas like that. I can't wait to share each of those 10 top challenges that we have in classrooms and all the different things that we can be doing within scripted curriculum to help those students in all of their very unique and special ways. Then the fourth P is prediction. We have to be excellent predictors of what could go wrong, but also what could go right. When we predict what we believe based on patterns of our students, patterns of our school day, when we predict and predict correctly, then we can plan for those things. So I really should have said predict and plan, but making an excellent prediction gives you the opportunity to really do what you need to do, and you will have a plan for that. So I'll tell you a story. My dad, quite unique gentleman. He'll be on several of our podcasts. So he was an educator for many, many years, and he was a daddy to 2 daughters, my sister and myself. I remember walking down a corridor in the mall one day. I don't remember what store we were in, but it's back in the 80s when malls were popular, and we were walking down the mall as a family. My sister and I were 8 years apart, but I was holding her little hand, and we were walking ahead of my mom and my dad. I wanted to be a fancy girl, so I was holding a purse over my shoulder. Out of the blue, I feel this jerking on my purse, and my purse rips off of my shoulder. I turn around and I scream. Well, much to my delight and surprise, it was my dad who had done that. And I looked at him and said, "Why in the world did you do that to me?" And he said, "I always want you to predict your surroundings. Always be ready for anything. When you're ready for it, you know how to react to it." And we stopped in the middle of the aisle, and I looked at him and I had this epiphany. And I said, "Do you really think somebody's going to rip my purse off my shoulder?" And he said, "You never know." That's the beauty of making the prediction. Trying to outthink everyone around you. Because you see now, from this moment on, if you in the back of your head have a plan for when somebody tugs in that first millisecond, tugs on the purse on your shoulder, if you have a plan for that, you'll know how to react. And I said, "Well, that's true, but how would I react?" I don't remember how old I was, but I couldn't have been very old. I was still walking through the mall with my mom and dad. And he said, "We'll talk about that at lunch." And we did. And he said, "And I want you to be prepared, because there will be another time in which I tug at your purse, and we'll make sure you implement your plan." Well, a man of his word he is, and he definitely did that, but it was months and months in the future. I'd long forgotten about the moment, but I had an opportunity to practice the plan, and it went well. It involved hitting my father. Oh, sorry, Dad. But remember, that was part of our plan at lunch that day. And he told me I had done just as we had planned, because I now knew how to predict what could happen and have my plan or my reaction to it. Now, we don't need to go around snagging purses, but point being that when I was very young, that was instilled in me that look at your surroundings, think about everything that could possibly happen, have a plan for it, and be ready for it. Because you see, when you have a plan for something, you're not surprised by it and you're not taken off guard. And speaking of having predictions, I want to talk about the 3 types of ways or things that can go off script. So I call this loving TLC when the plan goes beyond the script. So let's give it a little TLC. There are 3 types of issues that could happen that could throw you off. Number 1, that could be that it is something that's timely. That means you have to address it right then, right there, immediately. That's a timely interruption. In other words, that's kind of like a fire drill. If you're sitting there giving the best lesson in small group for reading in your life and a fire drill goes off, you will not be able to say, okay, all of you guys exit the room except my small group up here that I'm working with because, by the way, we've got to finish this. I was in a groove. Nope. It is a timely interruption and it requires a timely response. So those are your emergency type of situations. So in those type of situations, we need to look at how we react and we need to plan. That's why we have posters on the wall for fire drill evacuation routes. That's why we plan for other things in our current society that we wish we didn't have to plan for, but we do. And so we need to have plans for those timely interruptions. Another one that's not quite as scary, but a little bit gross, is when a student throws up in the middle of a lesson. You do not sit there and say, oh, hold on, please. I need to finish getting through my phonics lesson and then we'll clean you up, we'll clean your friend up, and we'll clean the floor up. No, you clean up right in that moment. Another story. When I was very large and 9 months pregnant with my very first child, at the time I was teaching kindergarten before I went to the upper grade levels. And of course, that son is 28 now. And so I was big and pregnant. I remember exactly what I was wearing. It was a cute little yellow jumper. And this little girl comes up to me and she says, Miss Whitney, I think I need to. I was like, what, baby? Now, I didn't have a lot of experience teaching, so I didn't have kids yet. I was about to have one that was born. But now there's a certain look on kids' faces when they're about to throw up. I didn't know that look quite yet. I hadn't taught kindergarten long enough, and I hadn't been a mommy yet. So you start understanding these different looks on kids' faces for different things that are about to happen next after you've taught long enough or been a mom or dad long enough. I did not know that the look on little Christy's face was that of throwing up. She did proceed to finish her sentence, but before she could, she threw up all over my big pregnant belly. Y'all, that was horrible. Do you remember that scene in the movie Stand By Me when they were eating the blueberry pie and then one person throws up and then another one and all of a sudden everybody, oh, it's a mess, right? I couldn't help my big pregnant self and everything was gross to me at that point. And I threw up on her too. Real story. We threw up on each other. It was so gross. But there was also nothing I could do about it. But here's why I tell you that story. That is an example of a timely interruption. When she came up to me to tell me that, I needed, in a timely manner, to react to her. Everything needed to stop. Everything needed to go toward fixing that immediate situation. Well, the end of that story is she went home. I did not go home. I actually worked kind of far away from my home at the time. But I also learned that day to always have a spare set of clothes in my teacher closet or in my car, because that's a very important skill as a teacher, to be prepared for anything like that. So that's the T out of TLC. L is leave it for later. A leave it for later thing is maybe a little kid is over here tapping. But if you look around, he's not bothering anybody but you. I have seen teachers, when I go in to do classroom lessons for language arts, because one of the things we do is teach big. We go in and do classroom lessons and we model, and then a teacher teaches, and we call it waving. We wave back and forth. And so I have seen a teacher sees something little going on around the room that doesn't seem to be bothering anyone else, including myself. And she stops everything and says, Johnny, stop tapping your pencil. Nobody around you can even concentrate when you're doing that. Let's stop that. So let's analyze that just for a moment. Nobody was bothered by Johnny but the teacher. But then the teacher stopped everything as though it were a timely interruption instead of a leave it for later interruption. What she should have done, let it play out, wasn't bothering anybody, finished the great lesson. She was doing a great lesson, by the way. And then after that lesson, the later part, address him and say, was there a reason you were tapping your pencil? Was there something bothering you, or you were just doing it because you didn't even realize it? Maybe you could have a conversation with him. But whatever the reaction is in the later, it is later. Timely interruptions need to be handled immediately. But if they are not timely, don't distract and take away from all the great things you're doing. The leave it for laters, that's for, a couple kids around the room. Maybe two of them are kind of shooting eyes at each other. But if it's not bothering anybody else, don't let it bother you. Leave it for later. Now, in the upper grades, it could be something like passing a note or passing a glance. It could be something like that. Again, if it's not already disrupting the entire class rhythm, you shouldn't be the one to interrupt the entire class rhythm by treating a leave it for later interruption and treat it as a timely interruption. Let's move on to the last one. The last one is the C in the TLC. And what I mean by that is it is the continuous care type of interruption. These are the ones we really have to turn on our good prediction skills for, because continuous care is usually the individual child who has a special challenge or concern that you need to address over time. Therefore, the term continuous care. That's the student that if he needs to be sitting up close to you, you continually know that that's a good plan. Or if he needs to be sitting in the back, or if he needs to not be sitting by a friend, or if he needs a fidget spinner while you're teaching, whatever the accommodation or adjustment is, that's something, if we have great prediction skills, that we can provide continuous care to prevent an interruption. If a continuous care individual student does something that interrupts, we have to decide, is this part of his continuous care? Is it a, hey, let's leave it for later after the lesson? Or is it something dangerous to himself or others? And if that's the case, then it becomes a timely interruption. If we get really proficient at understanding the types of interruptions, then we become really good at, if we're anticipating, we're really good at those reactions. So the next time my dad goes to pull the purse off my shoulder, I know how to react because I practiced it. So what are we doing in our heads and maybe even physically to anticipate the types of interruptions that can force us to go beyond the script? Remember, sometimes the script, that term is used loosely here, sometimes the script is a true verbatim script from our school or district. Sometimes the script is the schedule of our day. Sometimes the script is just our own to-do list and what we want to accomplish each day. But whatever script you're working within, anticipate and predict and plan for the 3 types of interruptions that are taking you beyond the script. Those 3 interruptions we can help remember those by the TLC acronym. Is it timely? Is it something that can be left for later? Or is it something that should go into continuous care for an individual student? So on your screen, I am putting up a triangle that is also at the beginning of the book, on the cover of the book. And this triangle represents the design, the delivery, and the delays that can happen in your classroom. The design is, are we designing the lesson whole group, small group, or individually? The delivery, is it kinesthetic, auditory, or visual? And then the delays are the three types that we just talked about. The timely, got to do it right now. The leave it for later, hey, I'll talk with you after this lesson. Or the continuous care, let's put a plan in place kind of continuous care for that individual student. So all the way around this particular triangle, you'll notice some things. For whole group, when we deliver something whole group, then quite often it needs to be in an auditory way, and it often, the type of delay that happens is a timely one. For example, if a fire drill happens, let's go guys, line up at the door, let's go. It's auditory, it's got to be quick, it's to the whole group, and it is timely. But then if we go in one more layer to the light blue layer of that triangle, you then have your small group instruction. It's very beneficial when you have small groups to make it very visual for them. You want to really help them focus. And that's often too a small group or a small number, maybe even one or two or three in the back of the room or somewhere in the room is doing something that's distracting their group, but it's not messing with the rest of the kids. Those are your leave it for later actions. If you have a little group of little girls kind of cackling and laughing over here onto the side, well, we don't need to stop all of the great learning and teaching that's going on to address them if it's not already bothersome to everyone else. Then going inward again on the triangle, the individual who has a particular need, maybe it's diagnosed, maybe it's not, maybe it's just something small, but often we have to address that in a kinesthetic manner. And going along the inner of the triangle, you'll notice that is also where continuous care is. So this triangle takes us through how are we going to design our lessons? What is our delivery? And what are possible delays? So throughout this book, it takes you through all of the pieces of how Beyond the Script really is put together. So I'm excited in a future podcast to talk to you about the 4 Ps because remember, we have to focus first on maintaining our purpose, maintaining our personality, maintaining and helping all of our people, and making good predictions so that we can plan. So we're living in a time in education where more and more people are asking why teachers are leaving, why students seem to be disengaged, why test scores are flat despite endless meetings and mandates and manipulatives. But I would like to flip the question. What makes a teacher stay? It's not the paycheck or the raise. They knew ahead of time when they got into teaching, this is not a millionaire job, but it is the purpose. Teachers stay when they feel seen, when they feel effective, when they know what they're doing is working. And that is what Beyond the Script is all about. Because when you improve your content, when you know what you're talking about, and I encourage you, if you don't know all the ins and outs of the content areas that you're teaching, search, learn, read, ask mentor teachers. Even if you're using YouTube as a resource, whatever your resource is, become what you feel is an expert in your content area. Because you see, when you are an expert in your content area, your students will feel that. They know when you're an expert. They know when you know all the things. But then teachers also stay because they know they're good at their craft. Your craft is how you deliver the lesson. I've talked to so many teachers that say, you know, everybody's getting out, but man, I love it. I love it. I'm going to stay. I'm going to ride whatever wave comes the way of education because this is who I am. You see your passion is what your content was once. In other words, when you learn a little bit about something and then you feel like you're pretty good at it, you tend to learn a little bit more and then a little bit more and a little bit more. Then it becomes your passion. And then guess what? When something's your passion, you want to learn even more. And so when we learn more and more and more about our content area, it does become a passion that we have. When it becomes a passion, you can't hold it in. You have to deliver it to people. Maybe it is a classroom full of people as an audience that you have every day. Consider yourself so blessed. But maybe it's even out to dinner with your daughter one evening and you want to teach her a life lesson. You see, when you know something well, and you love it, it's your passion, it's hard to keep it bottled up inside. You have to deliver it. And we call that delivery our craft. We'll talk about so many different fun ways to deliver lessons within scripted curriculums as we dive into this book and future podcast even further. But then another reason teacher stays because they are great predictors. That's right. They know that if I take care of my people, share my personality, don't lose sight of my purpose, and I am a good predictor of problems and things and challenges, then I'm a pretty effective teacher. If I can insert all of those things into whatever scripted curriculum I may be using, and I can anticipate the types of issues that take me beyond the script, and I can figure out how will I react after I recognize those types of issues. Remember, they're timely, leave it for later, or continuous care. So we infuse ourselves in the 4 Ps, the purpose, the personality, into our people, and make good predictions. And in those predictions goes right into TLC. Predicting in recognizing if this interruption is timely, should I leave it for later, or should I create a plan for continuous care for this kiddo? When we can do all of those things and go back to our mission statement, be experts in your content, great in your craft. That's what today's been about. And beyond that, that'll be our next one, which will be addressing the complements. How do we create a classroom environment that supports all of this? Nobody would ever leave that job. That's a job for the keeping. Because the money part, we don't have control over that part. A lot of times we don't even have control over our curriculum. But we do have control over the knowledge of our content, the delivery of our craft, and the compliments we give to others. So this was book 2 in this series. And if you're wondering, where in the world do I start? That sounds like just a lot of things. So if you're wondering where to get started, here are a few things I would consider asking yourself. Choose a chapter a week. Don't rush. Soak it in. Try one technique in your classroom that week and then add to it. Use the reflection questions very honestly. This is your private coach. The questions aren't there to judge. They're there to guide. Share your journey with others. Use it in book clubs, because remember, what we're passionate about, what we know about, we can't hold it in. We have to share it. Bring it to team meetings. Highlight your favorite quotes. Teaching is not meant to be a solo sport. It's a team sport. Let's all work together. And of course, you can always pair it with other Teach Big resources. I created this book to complement everything else we do at Teach Big. And so the Full Circle of Language Arts circle helps with our content. The Teaching Triangle helps with those things that go beyond the script. And then next episode will be all about the square. So let me talk to the different teachers out there. To the new teacher who feels overwhelmed by pacing calendars and worried about getting through the curriculum, this book gives you breathing room and the confidence to connect before you comply. And to the veteran teacher who has seen a dozen trends come and go, you'll see your own brilliance in these pages. You'll say, yeah, I do that. This book will help you recapture your spark and remind you that your craft still matters. To the instructional coach or campus leader, this is a phenomenal tool for a team professional development. Read a chapter a month together, use the reflection questions, use it in a PLC meeting, but reignite professional learning with an absolute purpose. If you've ever felt like something was missing in your teaching, if you've ever felt like your lessons were solid but weren't connecting, if you've ever wanted your classroom to feel different, not just look different, then Beyond the Script is definitely for you. Because teaching isn't just what you say, it's how you say it. It's the pace, the pause, the passion behind every word. And that's what this book is about, getting back in touch with your teacher voice. So here's your next steps. Grab a copy, read a chapter a week, and then email me. Direct message me, tag me, whatever resonates with you. Tell me all about it. Share with me along your journey. I'd love to be a part of your journey. Tell me what's changing as you're going along. Tell me where you want to grow next. And remember, every episode of the Teach Big podcast is going to help you grow in either content, your craft, or your compliments, what you teach, and how you make them feel. So thank you so much for joining us today. You have been an amazing audience as always. And I'm very excited, obviously, to share this book with you and share my story of my sweet daughter-in-law, who was a huge inspiration and is the dedication of this book. So thanks for joining me today. If this message inspired you, share it with a colleague, or better yet, bring it back to your own classroom and start teaching with your whole heart. Teach Big. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. And until next time, teach big, think big, and believe in the greatness that is already within you.